It's amazing. It's spectacular. You know where I'm going with this. Hey everybody, what's going on? I am so excited because I finally get to talk about one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and that is Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm just going to come right out and say it's a great movie, but there's a lot to talk about, so we're going to get right into it. After the events of Civil War, Spider-Man has to go back to, and for lack of a better term, his unspectacular life of being the street superhero and even worse, being a high school student. Look, this is the Spider-Man movie you have been waiting for. While the Tobey Maguire ones had their moments, and the first Andrew Garfield one had a little promise, but then spectacularly failed in the second part, we finally got that little bit of time with Spider-Man and Captain America Civil War, and it was amazing. I know I keep using all these Spider-Man terms. This movie deserves it, and this character deserves it, and this actor deserves it. This is the one you've been waiting for. This feels so much like a Spider-Man comic book. It's ridiculous. There's just so much going for it. First off is the characters, and we of course have to start off with Spider-Man. Tom Holland as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man is spot on. He has the quips of Spider-Man, the athletics of Spider-Man, and yes, I know there's CG and stuff involved, but he's a very athletic dude too, so he does really well at that part. But plus, he has the awkwardness of Peter Parker, and this is high school Peter Parker, so we get all that the awkward nature and awkward high school stuff that a lot of us dealt with in high school. You know, he likes the pretty girl in school. He's just kind of the, you know, he's, I wouldn't say he's unnoticed because, you know, Flash Thompson's in this movie and they make fun of him and stuff like that. But he's kind of the underdog as Peter Parker should be. And what's great about Tom Holland playing this character is he handles all of it very well. He handles the action, he handles the awkward kid. He also handles the stuff when it comes to Spider-Man having to, you know, he's had this brush with fame, so to speak, when he fights with Iron Man, and he's waiting for that call to come back, and he wants to be an Avenger and all that stuff. And Iron Man wants him to be, you know, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, as he puts it in the movie. And, you know, he gets kind of impatient about this. And, you know, the way that Tom Holland covers all this stuff, the way he acts all this stuff out is perfect. Next, let's talk about the villain. Michael Keaton plays Adrian Toomes, a.k.a. the Vulture, which, granted, they don't call him the Vulture in the movie, technically. It comes up, but he doesn't, like, dub himself the Vulture. The villain, like a lot of Marvel movies, somewhat generic, but I think Michael Keaton's a good enough actor that he takes what he's given and he turns it into something. You get, you know, he's basically a arms dealer, which is really cool the way that comes about, and I won't spoil that for you. The kind of weapons and stuff that he's selling, but it turns what could be just a street crime into a big deal for Spider-Man to try to handle, and that's a big part of the plot. And Michael Keaton is so good as an actor that he takes this simple premise, and they have a setup for his character. It's not really an origin. They set up his character at the very beginning of the movie, and I don't want to say you're going to sympathize with him, but, you know, they try to set him up a little bit as, you know, a sympathetic character, even though in the end he's a big time villain and you don't sympathize with him really at all. You sympathize with some other people around him, but not him. Just the fact that Michael Keaton is playing this role, he's funny in the times he needs to be funny, which he does crack a couple jokes and they're pretty good. When he needs to be dead serious, he's dead serious. When he needs to be scary, he's scary. I'm kind of glad they got someone like Michael Keaton to play this role, because if they hadn't gotten someone, you know, with the chops to pull something this simplistic off, it might have just felt a little more generic, which, like I said, Marvel deals with that a lot, where they kind of have some generic villains. While he's not the best villain they've had, for a Spider-Man villain, for a street level villain, I thought he did a really good job. And, like I said, Michael Keaton is just the man. So, he's going to bring something to the role, and he does, and makes it his own. Let's talk about Tony Stark a little bit. I was a little surprised. As much as they're pushing Iron Man and Tony Stark in the trailers, he's not in the movie a ton. But I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. I think they use him just enough to make it perfect. The way they do it is they show the beginning of the movie. They show the aftermath of the Civil War battle, where Tony's taking Peter Parker back home, basically, and he ends up giving him the suit. And a lot of the movie is Tony Stark trying to say, you need to start slow, kid. And of course, Peter's impatient, and, he wants to, move on to bigger and badder things. And that's kind of a lesson of the movie. And just having Tony Stark in it enough, it's almost like Tony is always away. They do some clever ways of him to communicate with Peter, not being in New York with him. And, they use him just enough, and they use him very effectively when they do. There's a couple scenes where when he appears and it works. There's some that are really funny, but then there's one that's really serious and it's really good. And you get to see a side of Tony Stark that, usually it's the big snarky side, but Tony kind of plays a de facto dad to Peter in this. And they even kind of talk about that because he always keeps saying, I sound like my dad, and we all know the history between Tony and his dad, according to the movies. And and I'll talk about this later, Peter doesn't have a father figure anymore, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But yeah, having Tony Stark in this, not a ton. He doesn't overwhelm the movie. There is one scene where the movie kind of turns into Iron Man for a minute. But it works. It's almost needed, because if we're not going to get another Iron Man movie, you might as well have these scenes in it. So yeah, their use of Tony Stark was really good, and as always, Robert Downey Jr. is great as him. Now let's talk about the minor characters. Aunt May. Aunt May's role in this is pretty simplistic. It's what you expect. She just wants Peter to be safe. She doesn't know he's Spider-Man. And of course, that's the whole thing is, if she knew, she wouldn't let me do it. They definitely play on the Aunt May as the hot aunt, and I like that. And it's not just Tony Stark, though. Again, he makes a comment like he did in Civil War, but then again, other characters are making the comment too. So yes, you don't really need to beat into your head, but they do it kind of anyway. Because yes, Marissa Tomei is very attractive, and a very attractive Aunt May. And they play on that a little bit. And she has, I definitely won't spoil it. It's near the end of the movie. She has one of the funniest scenes in the movie, and you'll love it. It's perfect. Next up is Zendaya, who plays Michelle. I can't really say much about her. They play her off like she's a side character, but then they kind of focus on her a little too much. And while I won't say what her character ends up doing, they focus on her too much, and you're just like, she's going to be important. And she kind of does end up being important, but not right away. That's all I'm really going to say about her. Next up is Laura Harrier, who plays Liz. She's basically the high school crush of Peter. She's a senior, and I think Peter's a sophomore in this. And yeah, he's that awkward kid, and she's the hot girl, And of course, she's a smart one too, because she's on like the whatever debate team or whatever it is they're on together. But yeah, she does fine. She has she plays the part what she needs to play the part. I can't really say too much because there is a plot point that I don't want to ruin for you. But yeah, she's fine. I won't say it was like a bad performance or a great performance. Just she played the part well. Let's just put it this way. I'm going to say this about characters. I have no fault with the characters in this movie. So if I say they're fine, they're good. I'm never going to say they're bad because everyone in this movie was great. Next up was Jacob Batalon, who played Ned, and it's Peter's best friend. He's the, they're both kind of geeky kids. I mean, they kind of collect stuff, kind of like other people I know. They're he's just that friend, and he finds out right near the beginning of the movie that Peter is Spider-Man, and of course he's that friend that has a million questions, and he wants to be kind of a sidekick. He wants to be the guy in the earpiece kind of thing. And I thought he did pretty good. He was goofy at the right moments, serious at the right moments, had some pretty funny lines. He was a simple character, but as a person for Peter to play off of, he did a good job. Next up is Donald Glover's character. I don't want to say too much about him because I think he's going to play into the future. And no, he's not Miles Morales. Everyone's like, they might have been lying about his name. No, he's a street criminal, and he's buying weapons, and that's how Spider-Man interacts with him. I don't want to say too much, but fans of the comics, something he says, fans of the comics, I think you're going to figure out. I kind of figured it out, and then I wasn't sure because I couldn't remember, but then I did the research and I was right. And it's a good thing. I think fans of the comics will be happy with who he is and what his character can lead to. A couple established characters return. One is Happy Hogan. He's kind of Peter's babysitter, is the best way I can put it. And another character returns, which I won't spoil who it is, but it's someone we didn't think was probably going to come back. The plot boils down to this. Peter thinks he's ready for bigger and better things. He did this whole thing with the Avengers fighting Captain America, and he's ready to put the big boy pants on now. And as I said before, Tony wants him to be, the street level hero, and Peter Parker is ready to give up everything to be the big hero. And I mean, ends up having trouble in school, and of course he passes up on other things in just regular life to go fight the Vulture, who he thinks is a huge threat, which he is. But it kind of plays into the whole, Peter's an outsider, and of course he has to give up pretty much everything he cares about to be Spider-Man. And that's always been a theme with Spider-Man, is he's always having to sacrifice. And the way this movie does it, it's great because he has to, he wants to be the hero so bad. And this also plays into the plot of, even though they don't say it, with great power comes great responsibility, because Iron Man keeps telling him, what if something happens? That's on you. And what if something happens to you? That's on me. It's all about, there is responsibility, and you need to learn how to wield that responsibility and that power. And just the way they weave everything together, it feels like everything you want to be in a Spider-Man movie. There's a whole thing about how the suit doesn't make the man, but the man makes the suit. And that is one of the best parts for me, was, Spider-Man says, I'm nothing without the suit. Then Iron Man says, well, then you don't deserve it, And that leads to, Peter donning his old suit again, his homemade suit. And honestly, I really like the look of the old suit. I'm not going to say they should replace it with that, but I think the homemade suit was really cool, because unlike the Tobey Maguire one, which, it was the sweatshirt or whatever, it was too homemade, and unlike the Andrew Garfield one, which was way too high tech for a high school kid. This is kind of a mix between homemade and genius. He's got like the cool eyes that still do the focusing and everything, and he's got his web shooters, but everything still looks kind of homemade, but it's still kind of techy and cool. And when it comes to the suit, that's another thing. His Tony Stark suit, let's just say he unlocks some of the powers of it. It's more than you've seen in Civil War, and it's almost like an Iron Man suit. It has the AI and all sorts of cool things, and there's a lot to cover there, and I won't talk about it. But there's let's just say there's a learning curve, and the AI is very much like a Jarvis. Where it talks to him like it's a human being, and he treats it like it's a human being. And it's kind of cool, and a couple times it's a little distracting, but this is a suit that Iron Man made, so of course it's going to be just the high tech of high tech, and it works for me because in scenes where Spider-Man's alone, he doesn't always have to talk to himself because he can talk to his AI now. So yeah, the tech stuff's pretty cool, and it plays into the whole stepping into the big boy pants thing because when he starts using some of these new powers of the suit, it doesn't go the way he's planned. Things don't come easy for the Spider-Man, and the dealing with the suit is just part of it. Lastly, let's talk about some side notes. Uncle Ben, they don't mention his name. They don't force in all that stuff, but they do imply it. They mention that Aunt May's had a hard time lately. And I think that's their way of not forcing the same story down our throats, but having it be still there. And I thought they handled it well. I was glad we didn't do another origin story, even though a lot of the questions that Peter's best friend asks him would be origin story questions. How'd you get the powers, things like that. And they mentioned the spider bite and things like that. So just in exposition talk of a super geek best friend asking his new buddy who he found out was a superhero the questions you'd ask helps to cover the origin story that we didn't need. Next up, Michael Mando. Fans of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul love this guy. He's Nacho on that show. They set him up as a future villain. Now, we don't see that future villain, like what he becomes, but we know what he's going to become. When they mention his name in the movie, you know who it is if you're a fan of the comics. And yeah, they couldn't have picked someone better. I love him in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So if he's going to be the villain in the next movie, I'm all for it. Next up is Stan Lee's cameo. Not his best cameo. It was one of the more simple ones. Very simple ones. But that being said, now that we know about who Stan Lee kind of really is, thanks to Guardians of the Galaxy 2, it could be anything. And he's going to be, more than he is, even if he's just playing a small role. Lastly, the after credit scenes. First off, once again, Marvel movie. You know what I always say. Here's the screen. Listen to Nick Fury. Very wise. The mid-credit scene basically sets up the next Spider-Man movie, and I really can't talk about it because it'll spoil plot points of the movie, and I don't want to do that. It's really a simple scene, but it'll get you excited for the sequel. There's something that happens in the middle of the movie, and that comes to play in the mid-credit scene, and I was all for it, especially knowing what I knew from the first scene. Then there's the final after credit scene. All I can say about it is this: it's a cameo that plays on something that happened during the movie, and then it's probably the funniest Marvel after credit scene they've ever had, because it is so meta. And that's all I really want to say, because it is such a great moment. It is so funny. Just such a big meta moment that everyone that has been fans of the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you will get the biggest kick out of it. And that's all I really want to say, because I would not spoil this for anybody. Well, until I do my spoiled review anyway. As always, thank you so much for watching. Guys, attach whatever adjective you want to this. Amazing, spectacular. This is Spider-Man. This is the Spider-Man you've always wanted. This is the Spider-Man I've always wanted. If this is the direction they're going to go with Spider-Man, and they don't let Sony totally run the thing, if they keep letting Marvel have a say and put together decent movies when it comes to Venom and the future of Spider-Man and whoever else they're making, I think they're doing a Black Cat movie. This is the way to do it. This is the way it should have always been. If you're a fan of Spider-Man, you are going to love this movie. Whatever little minor flaws it has, you're going to forget about them, or they're just not going to matter at the time anyway. This is the Spider-Man movie you've been waiting for. I had a smile on my face the entire time from the opening credits to the very end of the credits. I enjoyed just about every second of this movie. The action's good, the humor's good, the plot's good. It's just a really, really good movie, and you are going to love it. And that's all I can really say about it. So after you've seen it, what did you think of Spider-Man? Did you think it was better than the other movies? Do you like the other movies better? Let me know in the comments down in the section below. But remember, it's only just one guy's opinion. I'm Gino Reynolds from The Real Gino. Till next time.